So Vechain operate in supply chain management, meaning that in effect they provide businesses with better information about their supply chains, and then those businesses use that information to generate cost savings and improvements in their logistical processes and so on. And if you and I are direct competitors in business, if you're using a technology like Vechain's and therefore you're more efficient or you can provide customers with better information than I can, if I don't start using a technology like Vechain's or some other similar technology, I won't last for very long in today's hyper-competitive marketplace. Before we get any further, if you're not yet subscribed to our channel and you're serious about Vechain, consider subscribing as we have fresh content out daily. Anyway, moving on, because Vechain operate in supply chain management, it means that there is one industry above all which is indispensable to Vechain, an industry where supply chains are in effect 95% of the business's operational side, and of course I'm talking about e-commerce. Now if I ran, let's say, a barbershop, then sure I'd have to get my supplies from somewhere, but in reality supply chains aren't all that important in running this business, and I can't see how in this particular space I'd be able to generate a significant competitive advantage using Vechain's services. But however, if instead of barbering I ran a store which sells imported shoes online or pretty much any other product, then actually a significant portion of my business is concerned with supply chains. And so e-commerce is a very important area for Vechain and a large source of potential partnerships and growth. Now I want you to take a look at this chart which is displaying e-commerce sales as a percentage of total retail sales in the United States. Now in Q2 of 2020, even after a sharp increase in demand caused by the pandemic, e-commerce accounts for just 16% of total retail sales, and globally the figure is even lower as comparatively speaking the United States is a highly technologically developed country, and therefore people use e-commerce more than the global average. Now at 16% of total retail sales in the USA, e-commerce as a market has the capacity to triple in size and then still be below half of total retail sales. And again, bear in mind that the global average is likely to have even more room for expansion. Now I don't think that there are many people who will say that e-commerce is falling. I mean the trend is clear and e-commerce is gaining popularity. In fact, roughly 1/3 of the global population is below 18 years old, and for many of these people growing up in urban areas, they've grown up with the likes of Amazon and Uber and Tesla, and in almost every case, they've grown up using the internet. And so I personally believe that over the next 5 and 10 years, when this group are moving out and forming their own households, entering into the workforce, they're going to account for a much higher percentage of total expenditure than they do right now, and then most of that demand is going to be e-commerce based. And so based on this analysis, and the fact that even though e-commerce has been around for a while, it still accounts for just 16% of total retail sales, I would say that we're at a turning point in modern history and life. Looking back at the 90s where we saw the introduction of the internet on a widespread scale, we can now in retrospect see how quickly things were changing, but when you're living in the moment it's hard to perceive the true scale of change, because on a day-by-day or month-by-month basis, life doesn't seem to change so much, and we're all busy with work and personal commitments and so on. But actually taking a step back and considering the data, I really think that we are on the dawn of another era of rapid and disruptive change. But just being able to foresee a large-scale industry change to some degree isn't enough to be a successful investor. One then has to be able to accurately select the winners and avoid the losers. Take this for example. Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who invented the modern internet, while he has contributed more to society than pretty much anybody else in history, he's not the richest person in the world. I don't even think that he's a billionaire. But the people who built the Amazons and the Ubers and so on are the people who became billionaires with this new technology. And that's because they predicted how the technology would change consumer demand, and then they built their platforms which serve that new demand before it even existed. And it's not just the founders who became rich, but actually many of the early investors, provided they didn't sell out, have done extremely well too. Imagine having bought Amazon stock at the initial public offering. You'd have a few $1 million for every 1,000 invested. And hey look, I may well be wrong about Vechain. I'm just human and people do make mistakes sometimes. But having said that, I really do believe that we are on the doorstep of monumental change. I believe that we have a unique set of circumstances whereby e-commerce is still unsaturated and has a lot of capacity for growth. And then we have a critical generation who are on the cusp of adulthood and who have grown up with the internet and have used it for most of their lives. These two factors acting in tandem I personally believe will facilitate a huge influx of companies into the e-commerce space. And as for Vechain, I think that as the market leader in providing companies with blockchain-based supply chain information to better their businesses with, Vechain have the opportunity to grow with e-commerce. And again, this doesn't guarantee success, but much of how Vechain will perform in the future will be determined by how well they maintain and strengthen their competitive advantage over time. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe for more.